grocery lists. Have you ever found one left behind in a shopping cart or on the shelf at the market? Probably. Did you take it home and keep it? Probably not. They're pretty much the definition of boring, ordinary trash, right? Who cares? Some are less boring. Oh my God. Sorry. Some are less boring, an otherwise normal list, but with a warning. If you buy more rice, I will punch you. I actually know the real story behind this one, which is rare. It's a note from wife to husband. He buys a bag of rice every trip to the market, apparently even when it's not on the list. So to me, this is a pretty funny one, but it's also precautionary. Because like I said, I know the backstory, which means I also know the epilogue, and they're not married anymore. With most lists, we have to imagine what's going on. Others are mysteries, best left unsolved. So what is smelly stuff? Can anybody tell me? Worse, what recipe calls for baby meat? Can you figure this one out a little more easily? Tissues, oil, AAA batteries. A funny little peek into someone's life, probably their private life, I'm guessing. But again, who cares, right? I guess I do. I collect other people's grocery lists. And I take pictures of sad chairs and other stuff I find. The truth is, they get me thinking about the lives behind the things we leave behind. Still, most lists are boring, many are funny, more sad, but some tell us little stories. Here, someone trying to get through life or get a life with the help of humor. Definitely not in aisle 14. Here, someone trying to get through the week, perhaps a rough week, with the help of chocolate. And here, someone just trying to get through spaghetti night, I guess. It seems like you wouldn't really need a list for that, but whatever. I actually have around 4,000 lists, most found and contributed by strangers from around the world. Smartphones are replacing paper, but maybe one of yours ended up in my collection? Or will? Maybe. And not everyone finds them boring. Here they are at the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity. And earlier this year, they were part of an exhibit at the Art Gallery of Ontario with David Hockney, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and Claes Oldenburg. Yeah. You wouldn't think. The lists have even appeared on late-night talk shows, and the collection has been featured everywhere from Bizarre magazine to the New York Times magazine. Even I can't really explain it. Lots of other people find other people's boring grocery lists fascinating. And I think it's because it's good, clean fun. Well, it's usually clean, voyeuristic fun. There are, in fact, plenty that I cannot show you today, so you can see me after. Still, this goofy collection is not my life or my job. I'm married, shocking, I know. 2 kids, dog, co-founder of a strategic design and visual storytelling firm. But these lists opened up a huge new world to me. One serendipitous moment, finding a lost list in a parking lot in St. Louis, Missouri, in the middle of America. It cultivated my curiosity, attention, creativity, and even empathy. Turns out it did so for a lot of other people too. Things like these opened our eyes to the simple beauty of the everyday. Eventually, I found that just going outside, walking, riding my bike, noticing little details, whether I was finding lists or taking pictures of unspecial things, eventually I found that this process had become more of a mindful practice, a kind of guerrilla wellness program, just relief from life stresses, and something that anyone could do. It starts with really learning to use our attention, focusing it with the power of mindfulness, which together can fuel our creativity. That first part, attention, it's our superpower. It really is. And like any great power, it's all in how we wield it. We evolved attention to prevent us from ODing on information. Every second of waking life is one big game of finding the needle in the haystack, although it's really more like ignoring all the haystacks so we can find the needle, what's really important to us. Part 2, mindfulness, it's a skill. And judging by the number of books, apps, and retreats out there, it is a very desired skill. And while attention is in our DNA, mindfulness must be learned. It's simply the practice of paying attention to the present moment. And it's harder than it sounds. But like anything you practice, you can get better at it. You can walk, cook, and even clean mindfully. The modern world is designed to wreck our attention, and mindfulness pulls it back together. Part 3, creativity. It is a muscle. You can grow it. Creativity is how we make new things, solve problems, and express ourselves. Up to age 10 or 12, we're practically full-time artists and explorers. But as we grow up, we begin to judge our creative efforts way more harshly. We think the things we make to be art must be beautiful and perfect and deep or original. You know, just really good, and that's unfair because creativity isn't only for exceptional artists. We're not all pro athletes, and no one judges the runner or tennis player who's not an Olympian. We don't jog to win gold medals, we do it because it's good for us, and it makes us feel good, and art should be no different. So what does it mean to find attention, mindfulness, and creativity in the ordinary? I think it starts in your pocket with your smartphone. By walking around, paying attention, and taking pictures, we can do what I call collecting with photography. It's as simple as it sounds, even though born artists like my old friend Dave Gray do it. This is just one of his many collections. He's one of the most creative people I know, and that's probably because he can be motivated and inspired by something as simple as a circle. It's simple to collect with color, too. Although you can crank up the challenge if you want, everyday shapes and colors are an easy way to start. Find a few, and you have a collection. The hunt exercises our attention, mindfulness focuses it, and ultimately, we end up creating something new. You find a sidewalk repair that looks like California. I have almost all 50 states found in various places. Or just a bunch of leaves you love. Even if it's not new art, it could be a new appreciation or new perspectives. Of course, you can collect with actual items, but photography is way less messy. Trust me, my 4,000 lists, which fit in a plastic tub, and my tens of thousands of photos, which I can store in the cloud, take up way less space than the person I exhibited with who collects vintage vacuum cleaners. Another way to pay attention and collect is Parietalia. It's a big, weird word, Parietalia. But it just means that people often see specific, meaningful images in unrelated visual patterns. It was once thought to be a symptom of psychosis, but it turns out we're all just wired for it, especially for faces. It probably gave our ancestors a survival advantage identifying threats in the wild, but just look how expressive found faces can be. What do you see here? The objects themselves or the faces? Who's happy? Who's sad? Who's frightened? Surprised? A couple abstracted features in our brains see faces, even emotion. Every single one of us is seeing them right now in ordinary things. And there's Clotilde Olive and Molly Montgomery. They notice and collect naturally occurring alphabets seen in stones. Thanks to Parietalia, your language's letters also stand out to you. Are these perfect? No. They're better than perfect because they're unique. Lisa Reinerman sees letters in the negative space between buildings. Reverse silhouettes seen from street level. And I love this on so many levels. At first, it's a great example of noticing something that was there all along. Even better, that something, it's more like nothing. It's the empty spaces that make up these letter forms. And there's just a fragmented beauty to this collection, and I think it's worthy of fraving. My friend Austin Kleon is known for his newspaper blackout poems and his several fantastic books on being creative. But he also photoshops signs he comes across on walks and calls them D-signs. So instead of just seeing things, we can make things our own with interpretation and by editing. Here it's the same principle as his poems. It's creation by subtraction using everyday stuff. Remove the BE from belongings in that sign, and the message becomes existential, like the opposite of ordinary, right? Of course, you can add to what you find as well. This is a good one. Michael Peterson transforms tiny locations into big surprises. Look at this. Here's the weed of the month, awarded for steady progress and dedication. I can tell, but how can you not love this? It's awesome. It really is awesome. He turned an ordinary weed into something that makes us stop and smile. One day, I saw a three-legged chair slumped over on the sidewalk. It was just so out of place. It was so sad and so alone. So I took a picture. Hundreds of sad chair photos later, I was invited to turn them into a book. But chairs, they're just chairs, right? They're not very moving unless they're this chair. So you need to kind of add a layer of story. And just a little is enough. You laugh, but it's sad. She never calls anymore. Worst vacation ever. And family. One photo, a couple words, and people start to feel for these chairs. They come alive. So alive that others around the globe have collected more than 10,000 sad chairs on Instagram. And I promise, and apologize, but I think you will start to notice the sad chairs in your world after this. It happens. Oh, and my friend Scott Matthews took one I called Timeout. It's a chair sent off to the corner to think about what it's done. And he added another layer, just drawing on it, making my thing about someone else's thing, his thing. And renowned author-designer Jessica Helfand uses the grocery list collection at the Yale School of Art. The assignment to students is literally to think about the lives behind the things we leave behind. The result, short stories and illustrations that are rich with empathy and creativity. Projects like these reveal that there actually is something kind of special in ordinary things, like shopping lists and seats and stones. It's just on us to figure out what that is. So how can you do this too? You already know, because I already told you. Walk around, pay attention, and take pictures. We've all heard of exercise programs like the 10-minute abs workout and the 20-minute strength workout, right? Brevity with benefits. Why not the 30-minute noticing workout? It's healthy too. It's just walking and mindfulness, and we can do it creatively. There are two ways. The first, let's just call it ambient noticing. Just like mindfulness meditation, you allow yourself to experience moment to moment. Get out, walk, look. Sounds and smells come and go, sights and sensations. It's the same kind of attention we use when walking a flat, easy path or the sidewalk. You don't really have to think about what you're doing. We just soak in everything at a leisurely pace. Eventually, you notice something. It might be common. It might be unusual. It might be a bit of both. An architectural relic that's lost its purpose but not its place. What were these steps for, and why are they all that's left standing? I do not know, but ambient noticing is wide open. Anything goes. Then there's what you might call purposeful attention. Unlike the serendipity of ambient noticing, now we have goals. Maybe after first noticing a thing, whether it's a shape or a sad chair, or those steps, now you start to see other similar things. You seek more, you take photos, you grow the collection. The steps to nowhere, it turns out there were plenty all along. Places you walked by 100 times, now you're seeing them in a new way. This purposeful attention is targeted, so instead of that carefree walk, it's more like a hike over uneven terrain that requires specific footsteps, your careful attention. And just the same, we're on the lookout for specific things on a purposeful attention outing. I've known Paul Nordman a long time. He's a photographer, so he travels a lot for work. Everywhere he goes, he seeks out local basketball hoops. He loves basketball, so these have meaning for him, whether they're beautifully formed or barely functional. And this one's got a sad share in it, so you know that I love it. And no doubt, I think each of us could find something meaningful to collect. It isn't only about random junk or decay. Paul's a great shooter, yes, but remember, for us, the content and the contentment that the process can bring is way, way more important than the quality. And like Austin's poems, Paul's photos hang in my home. The ordinary made into art. And you can do the same for yourself. Look at these two pieces of DIY art. The painting on the left is just an accidental stencil left on the ground after someone spray painted some stuff. On the right, a rust pattern left by an iron railing, long weathered by wind and rain. Things so unspecial. All it takes is a little attention and they become special. I'm just choosing to see the beauty in them and the humanity behind them. Walk, look, click is simple, but there are hurdles to any creative or wellness endeavor. The 30-minute noticing workout helps us overcome them so we can grow our attention and our mindfulness and our creativity. For example, boredom. When we're bored, we don't pay attention. Ordinary equals dull. But by exercising our attention, really noticing and appreciating more everyday things, we kill boredom. That appreciation turns this truck into a color-coordinated celebration of autumn. And then there's insecurity, which we touched on earlier. Mindfulness helps us learn to pay attention and be creative without judging good or bad, interesting or boring, and perfect or flawed. So on your walks, accept what comes. Some days it's nothing. Other days it's a blue tree. This is life, not the Louvre. Be open. Finally, the eternal hurdle, inspiration. Starting from scratch is intimidating. It's stressful for artists, too. These workouts help us skip past the blank canvas and the blank page. By collecting with photography, you get instant inspiration and content. Literally everything around you. Even if it's barely anything, like a fleeting spot of color in a dirty parking garage, or a clean spot on a drab wall where graffiti used to be. And by the way, photography isn't necessarily the point, but it supports the process. You could write, paint, or whatever, using your pictures for reference rather than result. One last example. A while back, I took a primary school class out on a noticing workout, and for them, I called it an attention adventure. But these little kids did it in one walk around the block. They leveled up their noticing, attention. They embraced the moment and enjoyed themselves, mindfulness, and they made something new, creativity. And they thanked me using what they'd learned, and I really loved that. So I want to encourage each of you to try to notice a little bit of the beauty in the ordinary, because there is a lot of it out there. I learned how rewarding it could be, and I believe you could too. Thank you. Cheers.